Title: The Mycotoxin Exorcist. I never expected to be branded as crazy by my own family. The day they laughed at me, hurling insults like jagged stones, was the day they buried their love for me beneath layers of mold and shame. "You'll lose your mind, Dean," my older brother Mark had shouted, the air thick with disbelief. "You're gonna disgrace us all chasing ghosts and fungi. Just grow up for once." 3 years ago, I was a pest control technician. A pragmatic man with steady hands. But after being falsely accused of causing a dangerous mold outbreak, a smear campaign orchestrated by jealous colleagues, I lost everything. I was left with nothing but the terrible weight of their betrayal and the haunting whispers of an unyielding truth. There were things out there that could not be ignored. The mycotoxins they laughed at were my salvation, a doorway into an unseen world where I would become a mycotoxin exorcist, a rare breed of investigator in the realm of sentient fungi. And so, I plunged headlong into my obsession. I studied late into the night, each discovery leading me deeper into the shadows of a realm riddled with dread and despair. I faced horrors that would have driven lesser souls mad. The sentient fungi I encountered were not just infestations. They were parasitic entities, predators that fed not only on the physical but on the psyche. I wrestled with the shadows, learned to exorcise them. I became a master at unveiling the darkness, lurking behind walls, beneath floorboards. I was no longer the shameful disgrace my family thought I was. I had become an authority in my field. Years passed, and my solitary, relentless pursuit began to garner attention, both fear and respect. No longer merely the sick man who talks to mold, I was finally embraced by the academic community, by those who understood the frightening truth of what I'd uncovered. Stories of haunted architecture and cursed territories were not just folklore, they were warnings. Yet I always feared that the day would come when I'd have to face my family again. The dim, oppressive shadows of my past clung to me like an unwanted second skin. But dark fate has a way of drawing us back. And I knew that I had to return home. The call came when my mother fell ill. They feared the new house they moved into was infected with something unnatural. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach, knowing I was their only hope. The house was a decrepit Victorian, the kind that radiated whispers of death with every creak of dusty floorboards. I stood in the living room, the air thick with an unsettling silence, surrounded by the family who had once dismissed my passion as folly. My mother sat pale and shivering on the couch, while Mark's face twisted with a mix of anger and reluctance as the rest of my family stood huddled, their expressions a blend of skepticism and worry. "You think you can save her?" Mark scoffed, voice dripping with contempt. "This is just your weird hobby, Dean. You're not some exorcist." The word hung between us, charged with a power I hadn't yet revealed. "You have no idea what I faced," I said, my voice low and steady. "You'll see soon enough." I set to work, my tools laid out like a sacred offering. I felt the weight of their disbelief, the shadows of their ridicule at my back, but I pushed through. As I began to speak the incantations I had developed, the air around us shifted, heavy with a palpable dread. The flames flickered in the fireplace, dancing with a life of their own, and the room seemed to breathe. "Dean, stop this nonsense," Mark's voice shook. But I pressed on, my focus sharpening. I could feel the presence coiling through the house, an ancient intelligence that thrived on fear. It was there, lurking just beyond my reach, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the room, followed by a sickening squelch. I looked up to see dark spores swirling around us, coalescing into grotesque shapes. The fungi I had come to know were now materializing in front of my family, their sentience palpable, Their growth was unnatural, infectious, and hungry. My family recoiled, eyes wide with horror as the very thing they had mocked materialized before them. "What is happening?" my mother gasped, hands trembling. I stepped closer, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "This is what I warned you about, what I've been fighting. These beings thrive on ignorance and fear." I gestured to the writhing mass that now filled the room, the shadows flickering with malicious intent. Beneath the surface of the chaos, I felt the pulse of my power rise as I reached into the depths of my knowledge. I confronted the dark mass, battling an entity that craved dominion over the living. Mark was the first to break. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide, the realization of his folly crashing over him like a wave. "Dean, please, we believed you were crazy." Their disbelief had become a weapon, and now they faced the consequences of their ridicule. As the otherworldly fungi writhed, I knew this wasn't about vengeance. It was about survival. I recited the final incantation, my voice a beacon against the encroaching darkness. A blinding light erupted, driving back the shadows. The room shook violently, my family gasping as the malevolent presence shrieked, its form dissipating like mist under sunlight. The spores were banished, leaving us in a suffocating silence. The dust settled, and my family was left staring at the space where darkness had been moments before, their faces pale and hollow. I turned to them, not with anger, but with a profound sadness. "You laughed at my passion, but this is real. You now know the truth of what I faced." I left that house with the realization that vindication comes not just with truth, but with the burden of knowledge. My family stood behind me, the weight of their disbelief heavy on their shoulders. I was no longer the disgrace they once believed me to be. I was a warning, a testament to the horrors we often refuse to acknowledge. As I walked away, I glanced back at the haunted house, a bittersweet smile creeping onto my face. I had survived the darkness, had wrestled with the shadows they had never dared to confront. They would remember this day, etched in their minds like a scar, a haunting reminder of what happens when you mock the unknown.